Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready to play a little rock, paper, scissors?
Oh, you mean like virtually? I'm in.
Exactly. We're diving into deep learning for image classification, like teaching a computer to see.
Ah, I see where you're going with this. Instead of recognizing faces, it's got to learn rock, paper, scissors,
You
right?
got it. We're breaking down Chapter 6 of Deep Learning with PyTorch Step-by-Step by Daniel Voigt-Godoy. It's all about building a neural network to do just that.
Neural networks and rock, paper, scissors. Sounds surprisingly interesting.
Right. You'll be amazed how much we can learn from something so simple. So, picture this. We've got over 2,800 images, all different hands making those classic rock, paper, scissors poses.
Okay, I'm picturing it. And our model learns to tell them apart, like a rock, paper, scissors chant.
Exactly. But here's the catch. These aren't photos. They're actually computer-generated images, CGI.
Oh, interesting. So it's like our model's training in a video game world, not the real deal. Does that even matter?
It does. Using synthetic data like this adds a layer of complexity. Think of it like learning to ride a bike, but just in your living room versus out on a busy street.
Ah, okay, I get it. Both teach you to ride, but the street's got way more going on, more surprises.
Right. Our model's learning from these idealized images, not the messy real world. But before we even get there, we gotta prep our data. I'm not just talking about a quick cleanup, but a full-on standardization makeover.
Right, got to make sure those images are ready for their close-up. But what's standardization all about?
So images to a computer are just grids of numbers, right? Standardization makes sure all those pixel values have a consistent mean and standard deviation. Think of it like making sure all the images have a similar brightness range.
Ah, so instead of some images super bright and others dim, it levels the playing field for the model.
Exactly. And for this, we'll use something called the image folder dataset. It's great for images that are already organized into folders for each class, like our rock, paper, scissors dataset.
Handy. So we just feed the folders to image folder, and it does this standardization magic.
Yep. But here's the golden rule. Standardization is based only on the training data, not the validation or test sets.
Oh, so no peeking at the answers beforehand.
Exactly. In the real world, you got to teach your model with what you've got. You can't use info you wouldn't have access to.
Makes sense. Wouldn't be fair otherwise. Okay, so the data's prepped. How does our model actually see these images? You mentioned something about 3-channel convolutions.
Right. Since we have color images, we have 3 channels, red, green, and blue. Each filter in a convolutional layer, kind of like a mini scanner, also has these 3 channels.
Okay, I'm trying to picture this. So this filter, it scans the image, but separately for red, green, and blue.
Exactly. It's like each color channel of the filter has a separate conversation with its matching channel in the image, picking up on different details. And depending on how many filters we use, we get a different number of output channels.
So more filters, more detailed the model's vision becomes?
You got it. And to get even fancier, we introduced the CNN2 model class. It's got 2 convolutional blocks instead of just 1.
New blocks. Is that like giving the model a second pair of eyes?
Kind of. The first block might be picking up basic shapes and edges, while the second one zooms in on those details, seeing more complex patterns.
So it's like learning to recognize a hand forming rock, paper, or scissors, not just seeing a hand.
Exactly. But how do we make sure our model doesn't just memorize the training images? We don't want it to freak out when it sees something new.
Yeah, that overconfidence problem. Like a rookie who's only played against their friends and thinks they're unbeatable.
Exactly. That's where dropout comes in our secret weapon against overfitting. Imagine randomly turning off some neurons like the brain cells of our model during training.
Wait, turning off brain cells is a good thing.
Sounds weird, right? But it works. This randomness forces the model to find different ways to solve the problem. It's like having a diverse team. If one person's out, the team can still function.
So it's all about building in some redundancy, making the model more adaptable. I like it.
Now remember, this dropout thing, it's only active when the model's learning, not when it's actually making predictions. And this dropping out. Totally random, but we can control how often it happens.
So it's like adjusting the difficulty setting for the model.
Exactly. And here's where it gets even more interesting. We use different types of dropout depending on the layer. For our convolutional layers, the ones dealing with images, we use something called dropout TIM.
And dropout Simon. Why the Timon? What's so special about it for images? Okay, so think of it this way. Imagine you've got a photo, right? Now, what if you randomly erase some pixels?
Kind of like a glitchy image. It wouldn't be perfect, but I could probably still tell what it was.
Exactly. But what if, instead of erasing random pixels, you take, like, a red marker and completely wipe out all the red in the image?
Oh, that'd be way more drastic. You'd still get the basic shapes, but losing a whole color would make it look totally different.
Exactly. And that's the difference between end dropout and end dropout torn. Regular end dropout is like randomly removing pixels, some noise, but the info's mostly there.
Yeah.
End dropout torn, though, it's like removing a whole color channel. It shakes things up for the model, forces it to adapt.
So it's like learning to recognize, say, a banana, even if you can't see its yellow color. Makes the model more resilient.
Exactly. It's got to learn those shapes and textures, not just rely on color cues.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've prepped our data, made our fancier two-block model, and even threw in some dropout to keep it on its toes. But we haven't talked about how quickly it learns. There's got to be a setting for that, right?
You're talking about the learning rate. It's like the gas pedal for our deep learning model. Too fast and it might miss the mark. Too slow and, well, it might take forever to learn.
Right. Too fast, and it's like trying to speed read a textbook. You might miss the important details. Too slow, and it's like trying to learn a new language one word a day.
So finding that sweet spot is key. How do we even know where to start?
Well, we've got a few tricks up our sleeve. There's something called the Karpathy constant, a solid starting point suggested by an AI guru. But sometimes we got to adjust on the fly. It's like driving. You wouldn't take a winding mountain road at the same speed you take a highway, right?
True. So our model needs to be able to shift gears like a pro. That's where adaptive learning comes in.
Exactly. And one of the most popular ways to do this is using the Atom Optimizer. Think of it like giving our model automatic transmission. It combines something called momentum, which we'll get to in a bit, with another technique called RMS prop to fine-tune the learning rate as it goes.
Wait, so each little knob we're adjusting in our model gets its own personalized learning plan? That's wild.
You got it. It's all about efficiency. And it does this using something called exponentially weighted moving averages, EWMAs for short. Imagine you're trying to, I don't know, predict the stock market. Would you give equal importance to the stock price from a year ago and the price from yesterday?
Probably not. What happened yesterday seems way more relevant to what might happen tomorrow.
Exactly. EWMAs work similarly, giving more weight to the recent stuff and gradually forgetting about the old news. Adam uses this principle to keep track of the gradients, those little nudges that tell the model which way to adjust.
And it also uses something called a squared gradient, right? Why is that? It seems like we're adding extra math just for fun.
Not just for fun, I promise. Think of it like this. Squaring the gradients, it's like highlighting the really important feedback. Big errors get amplified. Small errors, not so much.
So it's like giving the model a little nudge in the right direction most of the time, but a
Right.
firm push when it's really off track.
You got it. And there are these two parameters, beta 1 and beta 2, that control how much weight Adam gives to recent versus old gradients. Higher values mean smoother learning, while lower values make it more adaptable. Finding the right balance there is important.
Adam sounds like it has this adaptive learning thing down. But earlier, you mentioned good old SGD, stochastic gradient descent. I thought that was way simpler. Can it even compete?
It is simpler, but with a little help from its friends momentum and Nesterov momentum, it can still pack a punch. Picture a ball rolling down a hill. It gains momentum as it goes, letting it power through those little bumps and dips, really.
Yeah, so momentum helps SGD gain some speed and navigate those flat spots in the learning process more efficiently.
Exactly. Instead of just relying on the current gradient, it adds a bit of inertia to the updates, making them smoother and less prone to getting stuck.
Okay, I'm with you. Now, what about this Nesterov momentum? It's like momentum, but smarter. Okay, so if momentum gives our SGD a bit of a push, Nesterov momentum gives it a pair of binoculars to see a little further down the road.
That's a great way to put it. Nesterov momentum takes a sneak peek at the future, so to speak. It calculates what the gradient would be a little bit ahead, and then uses that info to make a smarter update.
So it's like taking a practice swing before hitting the golf ball. You get a better feel for the terrain and can adjust your swing accordingly.
Exactly. Now, remember how we talked about adjusting the learning rate as we go? We can make our model even smarter by using learning rate schedulers.
Right, like adjusting your driving speed based on the road conditions. You wouldn't take a winding mountain road at the same speed as a highway.
Exactly. There are a bunch of different types of schedulers, each with its own strategy for adjusting the learning rate. Some, like Step-LR, reduce the learning rate by a fixed amount after a set number of epochs. Those are like rounds of training. Others, like Reduce Roll-On Plateau, keep an eye on the model's performance on a separate validation set and only lower the learning rate if the performance plateaus.
So it's like having a coach who can tell when the model needs a break or a change in its training routine.
Precisely. And then we've got the mini-batch schedulers, which adjust the learning rate even more frequently after each small batch of data the model learns from.
Wow, talk about micromanagement. But I guess with deep learning, those small adjustments can make a big difference in the end.
Absolutely. Now let's bring it all back to our rock, paper, scissors classifier. We've prepped our data, built our fancy two-block CNN2 model, and even used dropout to prevent overfitting. What else do we need to factor in?
Well, we could crank up that dropout rate to 50% for even stronger regularization. That means turning off half of those neurons during training.
Wow, really putting it to the test. And for our optimizer, let's go with SGD, but with that Nesterov momentum boost.
Love it. Before we start the training, though, we should probably do that LR range test, right? Find the best starting point for our learning rate.
Always good to warm up. This helps us find that sweet spot where the model learns most effectively. For this problem, we could even try a cyclical scheduler, where the learning rate goes up and down within a certain range during training.
Interesting. So we're giving our model the best training regimen possible, complete with warm-ups, interval training, and a personalized learning plan. What kind of results can we expect from all this optimization?
Well, using all these techniques, we can get over 90% accuracy on new images the model's never seen before.
That's amazing, especially with those computer-generated images, which can be a bit tricky.
Right. It really shows how powerful these techniques can be. And this was just a fun example. The same concepts apply to all sorts of real-world problems.
Exactly. Instead of recognizing rock, paper, or scissors, we could be identifying plants, maybe even diagnosing diseases from medical images. The possibilities are endless.
The key takeaway, you now understand the building blocks, the essential ingredients that make these models work.
We've gone from rock, paper, scissors to like a whole new world of possibilities. It's been quite a journey.
That's the magic of deep learning, right? There's always something new to discover.
So next time you're playing a friendly game of rock, paper, scissors, think about the power behind those hand gestures. You just might outsmart your opponent with your newfound knowledge of deep learning.
Until next time, keep exploring and keep asking those what-if questions.